Right, so good evening, guys, and welcome to the next installation of the Quantum Leap Business Show. I'm here with the freelance director, Claire Byrne, who's going to show you how to build a better business. So I'd like to hand it over to Claire Byrne now. Welcome to the show, Claire.
Thanks. Thank you very much. It's actually really lovely to be here and nice to be asked to talk. Talking is sort of my most favourite thing. So what a gift. So I've got about 40 minutes, I think, was the idea. I have no doubt that it won't take quite as long as 40 minutes. But the idea is I will give you a bit of an introduction to me, so you know who I am and who it is you're listening to. And then I've got these 5 actions. These are 5 points that I've found to be consistently valuable in any business. So very well worth a share. So let's start by, bear with 2 screens, giving you a bit of an overview of who I am. So you'll be able to tell by the pictures, that's me. That's me and my partner and my stepdaughter Poppy, and we live, as I said, down in Selsey by the beach. That's my lovely cat, Selsey Bill. He was a rescue from Portland, originally Portland Bill, so we had to rename him Selsey Bill because it's far more appropriate. And then that picture in the middle there, that's me almost at the very beginning. So you can see the size of the computer. You can see there's that dot matrix printer. Do you remember those, and the racket they used to make? There's some proper vintage cars in the back there. And what I'm doing on my desk, the reason that I'm making such a face is I'm coding invoices. So, you know, coding invoices used to be a very manual process of lots of pieces of paper and like literally filling in forms manually before keying them into your computer on a kind of a green dot matrixy kind of screen in the olden days. But starting from the beginning there has served me really, really well. It meant I learned all the different functions of an accounts department, of a finance team. And that company there I worked with for 10 years, and they also sponsored me through my training. So I'm AAT and SEMA qualified. And then once I became qualified, my uncle had started a relatively new business, and he kept popping over to me in Dorset asking me if I'd come and give him a hand with things like cash flow forecasting, with budgeting, with just all areas of managing the business really. So I thought, yeah, okay. So I went and joined this little company called Vetted Limited, and I planned to give it a year, and I ended up being there for 9 years. So in that time, the business grew from a sort of a 1.8 million turnover to a 25 million turnover. We went from having 1,500 members to 28,000 members, and we grew from, I think I was employee number 25, and by the time I left, there were more than 300 people working for that company. So what was really exciting about being in that business was that we actually achieved what it was that we set out to achieve. So Checkatrade, as it's now known, became a household name for protecting people from rogue trades, and that was what it was all about for us. So the last year or so that I was at Checkatrade, we were looking at bringing in investment that ended up being a kind of a share sale over like a 2-stage share sale. And that the work that was involved in that last year was pretty intense. I was still managing the accounts and finance functions of the company, as well as various other areas, and then the due diligence. So by the time the deal was done in the end of 2016, I was knackered. So I decided to give myself a break. I had a gap year at 37. I think everyone should do that. And it gave me time to think. I got to think about what was it that I love, what matters to me, and then what kind of a future did I want to plan for myself. So my passion has always been working with tradespeople, mostly because I think they're quite fun and direct and, you know, easy to work with, which I love. And I like helping people. I like being of service. So I kind of put those 2 things together. And now I kind of do a few different things. So I'm still a finance director. I do that for, at the moment, a wonderful company called Relish that really fits my values. They make products and games and puzzles and things for people with dementia, and they're really making a difference. So that's a really lovely company to be a part of. I also coach business owners, small owner managed business owners who want to kind of grow and develop their businesses. Most of the time when people start a new business, they're not trained in business itself, but in whatever it is that they're really good at. So it's useful to have somebody to come and talk to about, okay, so how do I build my business then? And I'm also a very new and recent business owner again. My partner and I have opened a new business called TraderMate, which is all about supporting tradespeople with their kind of bookkeeping and admin side. So I'm really excited to see what happens with that business. So my days might be pretty varied, but my values are very consistent. I care about people, I like to add value, and I strongly believe that if something is worth doing, it's worth doing well. So these actions, these 5 key actions that I've kind of put together for you, where does that come from? Well, what is the point? Why would you want to know these things? Well, in 2013, we were approached by a company at Checkatrade who wanted to buy the business. Now, we hadn't put this on the radar. We hadn't even considered selling at any point, but on the radar there was an offer of £10 million for the company. It was pretty exciting, but what it made us think about was, oh, you know, there is an opportunity. There is an opportunity in perhaps potentially bringing in additional investment into the company and potentially selling some or all of the business at some stage. So from that day, we started working on the question, what can we do to improve the value of this business? And I can tell you now with hindsight that it turned out to be these 5 specific things that I'm going to share with you. So let's get started with the first point. So you might have heard this little quote before if you've read any of the books by Stephen Covey, one of my all-time favorite authors, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. But the very first thing I would like to talk about is being clear on where it is that you want to go. So it goes without saying really that you've got much more chance of getting where it is you want to go if you know where that is, and it can help you stay focused on the direction that you want to be going in. So I'm talking about not just your business, but bigger picture here. Yes, think about what you'd like in terms of an end result for your business, whether that might be to sell it or it might be to pass it to a family member. But in terms of your life, you know, is this a business that you want to be running for the rest of your life, or at some stage are you going to want to be out of it? My chances are at some point you want to be out of it. So the sooner you start planning for that, the very better, really. And the sooner you start planning for it will also mean that you can put the time and effort and work into making sure that you're getting the best value, the best kind of multiple at the end when you get to that exit that you're looking for, or that event if that's what you're looking for. So the difference between putting the work in and not putting the work in, well, things change quite quickly, don't they? So it could be the difference between a business ending up in voluntary administration because something else has happened in your life and you can't continue to run your business, or it might be that you've set the business up in such a way that you can secure a very quick sale. I was talking to a very good friend and networking colleague of mine this morning, and he was telling me about how he's recently acquired a company because the owner was killed in a car accident, which is pretty horrific. But the work that this guy had put into his business meant that it was a saleable company and left something for his family as a legacy. So I think he was probably pretty pleased that he put the work into some of this stuff. So if you know where it is that you are now and you've had to think about it and you know where it is that you want to be at the end, the piece that's missing in between is obviously the business plan. So let me tell you about that. There are lots of different ways of creating a business plan. I've seen all kinds. And I think sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming to come up with a business plan of your own because you see the other people's versions of business plans that they've got experienced professionals to put together for them, and they're detailed and they're written in this kind of legal or financial language. Honestly, you don't need any of that. You can write it in whatever language you like, however you see fit, however you're going to best understand it. So don't let that put you off. So when should you have a business plan? Well, if you have a business, I would suggest you have a plan, whether you're brand new or whether you're well established. It's always a very good idea to come back and either review a plan that you have or create something new. There are a huge amount of things that you could include in a business plan, but I think really, if you focus on these 5 areas, if you make sure these 5 areas are covered well, that's the bones of your business. So these 5 areas are an executive summary, a marketing strategy, a competitive analysis or competitor analysis, something around the operations and processes in your business, and your numbers. And what do I mean by those things? So executive summary, that for me is an overview. It's the purpose of your business. What did you go into business for in the first place? You can consider in here what your bigger picture why is, if that's useful to you, but it's more along the lines of what problem do you solve, for who, and how do you solve it? That's the kind of overview of your business. The second element that I think is really important is your marketing strategy. Especially if your business has grown organically, you might not have stepped back and had a really good think about this process before. So this is thinking about, how do you generate your business? Where is it that your leads come from? And what is it that you do as a business, either proactively or kind of passively, to generate clients or sales? I think that's something well worth documenting. Then we come on to competitor analysis. So this is where you have a look and see what else is going on in the market, who else is doing what you do or similar. You can compare what you offer to what they offer. You can compare your prices to their prices. I don't recommend you use this solely to kind of pitch a price based on what other people are pricing, because that's a lot more involved than that. You need to really be thinking about the value that you're bringing to your product or service. But it's still very useful to have this competitor analysis, because at the end of the day, your potential clients are also their potential clients. And the more you think about this, the more you can tailor what you have to capture the people that you're really trying to capture. So it's also useful to have a look at your competitors to see what are they doing differently? How are they faring at the moment with all that's been going on with COVID? Is there anything they've done differently that seems to be working really well? Or is there anything that they've done differently that really isn't working very well? Oh, you know, there's little things that you can glean from having a look at what your competitors are doing. It's, you know, amazing to find sort of the kind of businesses you want to benchmark. I mean, that's going to be quite valuable to you in the decisions you make as a company. So the operations, systems and processes. So chances are you've kind of grown and developed your business and you have a way of doing everything. What I would recommend is you write down that way of doing everything. So everything from where you do your marketing to your kind of lead generation, the conversion rates, what your sales procedure is, what your after sales procedure is. Start with a kind of a brief overview of the you know, like a customer journey, and then break that down into smaller elements of exactly what that process entails. Who does what, who's responsible for what, and you know, as even as a separate piece of work. It's a really useful thing to have that as a tool. So for example, if I don't know, if you got amnesia and turned up to work the next morning and you needed to make your business work, you would have a document you could go back to and say, right, this is what I need to do. Okay, and the last element, which is what my favorite obviously, is the numbers. It's knowing your numbers. This is all about putting together the key financial information you need to know about your business. So the numbers are what helps you and supports you with your decision making. It's how you measure the progress and success or otherwise of your business. There's a range of kind of financial reports and KPIs that I think are going to be very valuable to include, but what I'll do is I'll talk about those in a little bit. So you could think that the goal here is to have a business plan, but actually the goal is in the planning itself. So the value in the plan is the process of the planning. It's at every stage of your business having the chance to think about how you do things now, because it also gives the opportunity to think how you could do things differently or better. So as an example, if you're mapping out your processes, you might find something that is duplicated, or something that takes longer than you'd like it to, or something that there's, a new app that's been developed that makes everything much easier and faster for you. So the process of thinking through the elements of this plan is what's going to be able to add real value to your business, which is why, again, don't have a business plan, put it in a folder and pop it on your shelf. It's a document that's kind of living, and you need to be able to tap back into that quite regularly. In my experience, and I've worked with, I don't know, I've worked with hundreds of different businesses over the years. In my experience, the businesses that have a plan are the ones that not only succeed, but they seem to really thrive. They grow at a faster pace. They kind of really have the focus and direction that it takes to build a business. So as I said, don't overcomplicate it. Create yourself a template and just make a start. So these next action points are kind of areas of a business plan that I think are going to fit quite nicely. So this, for me, is something I learned later on in the process. There are some great books out there, like Story Brand, that I wish I'd read earlier. So this point is around getting specific. So what are we getting specific about? We're getting specific about what you do, what problem is it that you solve specifically, and who specifically do you solve it for, and how specifically do you solve that problem. So this is really super important. If you're not really clear on what you do and who you do it for and how you do it, you're going to find that your clients aren't going to know either. So by getting really clear on who that client is, it's the basis for the message, the culture of your company, your social media strategy, your marketing strategy. It's kind of like the lifeblood through the rest of your business. So how do you do that? So pick your ideal client. So depending on your business, you might have lots of different types of client, but if someone was to walk through your front door today and really cheer you up, what is that absolute perfect ideal client? And then really start thinking about who they are and what makes up their kind of background and personality. So where do they live, their demographics, how old are they, what's their income, what's their disposable income, what kind of a job do they have, employed, self-employed, what do they do for fun, where do they spend their money, their family life. Really kind of dive deep into who this specific person is. And then when you've got that person, I mean, that's really useful for your message for now, but what's a nice little add to that is have a think about how is that person's life going to change over the next 12 months? How is that person's life going to change over the next 5 years? If you can kind of stay ahead, and I know no one's got a crystal ball, it's always a little bit of guesswork, but if you can kind of stay ahead of what it is that your customers are going to need in the future, you can be ahead of the game and ahead of your competitors. One of the amazing things that I remember doing with Checkatrade is we decided to ask people for reviews. We wanted to start publishing actual reviews of tradespeople, and this was something that at the time had never been done. This is before eBay even brought out reviews, but it was thinking about what are people going to want in future. They're going to want credibility. They're going to want to know that they can trust the trades they're looking for. So that thinking ahead is actually very valuable. So get specific, know your target audience. It'll also help you better deliver your products and services, because you'll be able to speak to your clients how they like to be spoken to. My mum always said, treat people like you would want to be treated yourself, but that's not it, is it? It's treat people the way that they like to be treated, especially when it comes to selling your products and services. What else is this useful for? It's useful for your marketing. So for example, if you're really clear on who it is that you're marketing to, you can choose what marketing platform is best going to suit your audience. So is it a specific kind of magazine that would be better than another? Is it a specific radio? Are there different radio stations that are better suited to your target market, your audience? when you really know who your audience are, it's much easier to go out to make those decisions around where to spend your money to go and attract those people. So yeah, very valuable, the getting specific. Very unoriginally, our avatar at Checkatrade was Bob, Bob the builder. Okay, so the next point, and yeah, this is my favorite area. I just love numbers. So know your numbers. It's an easy thing to say, isn't it? Know your numbers, but what numbers do you need to know? So it's much more than, and I see a lot of businesses do this, just watching your bank statement. There's a lot of numbers that you should be looking for and measuring and tracking within your business, and it doesn't have to be overly complicated to do that. So the first kind of area I would focus on is your KPIs. I've never been a fan of the term KPI. So basically you're looking at anything that drives your business. So any way that you would measure success within your business, that's what you would classify as a kind of a KPI. So you could look at things like membership numbers, you could look at unit sales, retention rates, you could look at your review scores, see how well you're doing on Trustpilot, that kind of thing. You could track the volume of leads, your conversion rates. There's a couple of conversion rates that are really valuable to keep track of. I mean, at the end of the day, you'll have heard this before, I'm sure, but you get more of what you measure. So make sure you're measuring the things that you want more of. That's so important. So you've got your KPIs. Then another area of figures that's really useful to have is your standard kind of financial reporting elements. So your P&L, that's, on a monthly basis, your P&L is really valuable to you. So you want to look at your revenue by revenue stream. Ideally, you want to be looking at your cost of sales, your contribution rates, overheads, profits, all those lovely shiny things that are a real mark of the direction that your business is going in. So remember as well, we're not looking at just a snapshot of where you are now. If you use that snapshot alongside your historical information, and you can start using it to put together a picture of the future. And that picture of the future, that's where the value of your company comes in. So the third really important area, and it surprises me how many people don't have this in their companies actually, but is a cash flow forecast. So a cash flow forecast is very different to a profit and loss. It is basically all about your cash. I would recommend you go for something that's sort of a 12-month rolling forecast. And what a cash flow forecast gives you the opportunity to do is think about your income streams and think about your expenses. So I mean, you could look at this with your P&L as well, but I would take the time, especially if you're doing this for the first time, is just to consider each of those elements on a line by line basis. So as you're going through and thinking, oh, I spend, I don't know, £250 a month with AXA, what's that for? Is that an insurance that I currently need? Is it fit for purpose? Is that the best price that I can get? Move on to the next level. I spend, £300 a month on printers. Do you need all of those printers? Is there a better option? Can you renew your contract? That's the way you're going to start looking at the savings within the business, as well as it's surprising how many people pay for stuff they don't actually need because they just always have. I think I had an AOL direct debit for about 2 years after AOL ended. So yeah, always a good idea to keep a track on your income and your expenses in way of a cash flow forecast. So knowing your numbers also means that you can make not only confident decisions in the kind of growth and development of your business, but it means that you can go for different opportunities. It means you can have a bit of a head start over your competitors as well. So for example, if you can plan ahead and know what money you have, you can make decisions around, should you lease or buy a particular asset, or should you lease or buy a car? At what stage, or especially if you've got a seasonal company, when would be best to kind of introduce new products if they've got a lot of outlay? And then the quickness of being able to make decisions. I mean, one of the things I always found very useful in having this cash flow forecast is, especially with Checkatrade, we quite often be called up in the morning from the TV studios, TV stations, and say, oh, there's an opportunity, do you want to sponsor? And it would be, I don't know, Coronation Street or Sherlock or whatever it was. Do you want to sponsor this particular show? So if as a company we had to first think, okay, is that a good fit for our audience? You'd have to think about who your audience are. Okay, already done that because we know our avatar. Does it fit our audience? And then can we afford it? You know, the time that it could take to go away and have to think about whether or not you could financially afford that kind of opportunity can take an awful long time. And if you've got someone waiting for a response that they need within 4 hours, you know, having the cash flow forecast and having all this work done in the background means you can very quickly make the decisions to take advantage of some of those opportunities. So these numbers, these lovely shiny numbers, at what point are they valuable to you? At what point are they best valuable to you? Well, I tell you when it's not. And I do see this as a pretty common occurrence. It's not 6 months after the end of your financial year. So if you look at the kind of, I call them old school accountants, the kind of old school accountant way of working, you might not know how your business is doing financially, other than a look at the bank statements from time to time, until your accountant has produced your year-end figures, which are already out of date by the time they've put them together for you. So how useful is that in terms of making decisions for your business? Well, it's not at all. So I would always suggest you try and get your financial information as up to date as you can, in as much real time as possible. So if that's not something you have, go and look for somebody who uses kind of cloud-based accounting systems like Xero. There's a lot of these clever electronic data capture apps now. There's some amazing apps with Xero. I'm sure that there are others with other softwares, but Xero is my favorite. That just to save time. You know, remember that picture back at the beginning where I'm sat there coding invoices? You don't have to do that anymore. You can set up an intelligent system where the software will go and collect that invoice for you, code it up, and all you just have to say is, yeah, you got it right, or just make a correction if it's got it wrong. These kind of better, newer versions of accountants out there are the ones who can advise you on ways you can save tax at a time when you can actually make the changes to save the tax, or they can advise you on things that you could set up differently within your business structure so that it works more effectively for you straight away. What you really don't want to do is wait until way after the event when actually you can't make any changes to anything and you've just got to pay your corporation tax. So those are the key areas, your KPIs, your kind of P&L elements, your cash flow forecast. If you've got all of that information in your business, you're going to be able to make some really confident, sound decisions on the safety and the growth of your business. And yeah, that's definitely my favorite area. So the next action point that I think is very valuable is make yourself redundant. So I mean, that might sound a little strange to hear. I thought it was a bit strange the first time I heard it. But if at some point you plan to not be working in your business, you're going to need to make yourself redundant, or not be the one that's doing all the work. If you want to sell the business one day, this is absolute vital importance. So in the business, there are going to be things that you love doing. There are things you don't like doing, the things you're good at, the things you're not good at. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're any good at it either. But don't waste time doing a substandard job at something, or distracting yourself with these frogs that you hate if you can help it. I would say find yourself a reliable, trustworthy, experienced professional expert and start handing some of those things over to them. I mean, it can have financial benefits as well. So if you think about the nature of the roles that you're playing every day, and and you're going to be doing probably bit of marketing, bit of finance, bit of like social media management, bit of accounts, but cleaning, whatever it is. If you can kind of look at all of those elements of your day and think, is there a better way of doing that? Is there someone else that could do a better job than me at that? And also, if you could earn more in an hour, if you could bring more value to your business in an hour than it would cost you to pay someone else to do it, and pay someone else to do it. In the kind of bigger picture, you don't necessarily have to recruit people in or outsource that work outside of your business if you don't want to. What you could do is upskill the people that you have, teach them wider roles, so they've so you can gradually kind of step away from those roles and oversee someone else doing it. I mean, one of the things I hear quite often from business owners is, but no one can do it as well as I do it. And yeah, that's probably true, but unless you want to do it forever, you are going to have to bring someone else in, trust them to some extent. You know, you can train them, you can teach them, you can mentor them, and they can shadow you for a time. There's a way of managing that process. So I would always encourage, you know, at least looking at it. So if you remember, the kind of first points I made was around starting with the end in mind. So if at some point you want your business to run independently, what I would recommend is writing up that list of functions like HR, sales, marketing. And then to start with, you can put your name against all of them. And the plan is to replace your name with someone else's name by the time you're out of the business. So make that part of your business plan. Who else can be responsible for those areas of the business? So other than the exit plan, the other way that this is actually quite valuable is because if you're looking to sell, if you're looking for an exit from your company at some point, you have to think about where the value is in your business. Now, for the majority of business owners I talk to, at the time, the value is in them. It's in them as the business owner, because it's all tacit knowledge, all of their systems and processes in their head. Everything they've ever learned about their business is all in their head. You know, they might look at their finances all in their head, which means that there is no value in a business, because you wouldn't want to buy a business where all the knowledge is outside of it. So the important element is to bring all that knowledge into the business itself by creating a plan, by documenting these areas, by having clear financials, by being able to have a kind of a step back. I remember one of the important things that we changed when we got that 10 million offer at Checkatrade is Kevin, you know, superb businessman, and he was so involved in everything. He absolutely cared so much about the people, the culture, the customers. He had a very much open door policy. It was his face on everything, his video. He created this Kevin's promise, which is now a money back guarantee. But at the time, it was so important to him. It was his promise. So over those 3 years, we had to have a plan, much to his distress to start with, of moving him away from being that pivotal part of the company. So we brought in a managing director who worked very closely with the senior management team. We documented our systems and processes. We made sure that everything was written down, so that amnesia kind of element of what if my team didn't turn up tomorrow, could I bring in new people and could they do the job? Yeah, it was, the processes were so clean, the processes were so well documented as well, that yes, there was safety in being able to pass the business over to someone else. And the difference that made in terms of the sale value was enormous. Those 3 years of hard work that we put into these areas and more, but these are the ones that I really think are the things that made a big difference, was the difference between a share value with a business value of 10 million pounds and the end sell value of 90 million pounds. So that's the difference you can make in a business in 3 years if you put this kind of work in. So that's why I wanted to share these specific points. So I'll just give you a quick reminder. So these areas we talked about are start with the end in mind. So know your exit, look at that first, and then create yourself a business plan. As I said, it doesn't have to be perfect or in legal language or anything like that. Just start writing things down and get it documented. Get specific so you can really know who your target market, target audience are. Spend the time and effort in understanding the numbers of your business. And as part of a bigger picture, you need to start making yourself redundant. So my personal approach to this, I mean, all of those elements are kind of intrinsically linked, aren't they? And when I start talking to business owners about, okay, so you know, where do I even start, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. So my approach, and there isn't a right or wrong way of doing this, but my approach would be to start with the getting specific. So really get down to what do you do, who you do it for, and how you do it. So when you've got really clear on that, make a start on some financials. Put a simple finance model together, a cash flow forecast together to check that the business that you have and plan to improve on is financially viable. It's now and again, luckily not very often, but now and again I'll come across a business model that doesn't actually make money. I work with a really great guy who had a marketing company a couple of years ago, and he was doing great guns and employing people and generating leads all over the place. But the way he had his business set up, the way that his business model worked, that whether he had 10 people working for him or 500 people working for him, he wouldn't have made any more money. So that's not a very useful business model, is it? So we looked at different kinds of business models that might work for him. But as part of that process, he said, you know what, I hate employing people. I don't even know why I went this route. What I really love to do is just do the job. So he went and got himself like a sales director kind of a role, and I've never seen him happier, actually. So yeah, it's quite important really to do the financials first and check you've got a viable business model. So when you've looked at that and you're quite confident in that, that's when you come back to building your plan. Look at the purpose of your business, the end result, and then factor in your kind of long-term strategy, and then use those other elements, like, you know, how to make yourself redundant as part of your longer term plan. Give yourself, I don't know, 5 years, and draw up a plan, as in if I'm here now, this is where I want to be in 5 years time. So these are the steps that I know I need to take. You don't have to stick to your plan, okay? Like, you know, if I know I'm driving to Manchester, for example, I know I'm going to drive to Manchester and I'm going to get to Manchester. If there are roadblocks in the way, I'm not just going to sit there and wait for them to be finished. You find other routes. It's exactly the same as a plan. There might be better options. You know, I might not want to go to Manchester after, you know, 2 hours in the car. I might change my mind and head back to Sandbanks or something. But the point is, if you know where you're going, you've got a much better chance of getting there. So maybe use a Word document, create yourself like a template or a framework. And it's a good idea to kind of take all of that information out of your head and get down on paper, because that's going to be where the value is in your business. So that's kind of my 5 action points. I would be happy if anyone wanted to ask me anything about those things. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I was asked if I'd provide like an offer as a kind of a thank you for being part of the Quantum Leap Business Show. So this is what I'd love to offer. One of my coaching packages includes this kind of essential outcome setting session, which I think was probably quite appropriate to what I've been talking about. So it's usually the starting point of any long-term coaching program, but actually it's just as effective all on its own. So the idea is I spend time with a business owner asking heaps of questions about all kinds of things around their business, so that I can start capturing all of that information from somebody's head and start feeding it into what becomes the framework of a business plan. I charge £299 for that, and I'm more than happy to offer a £100 discount for anybody that's come along to this workshop today or watching it back. So that's me. That's what I had to share. If there's anything you'd like to ask me, I'd be happy to answer.
Cool. I'd just like to thank Claire, and a big thanks to everyone that attended. Our next session will be at 7 p.m. We have the founder of BBX and Quantum Leap Business Show, John Attridge, who will be sharing with you his new book, Business Blunders and Bloody Great Ideas. In this book, John will share with you his business journey and some golden nuggets of wisdom from his black book of vast thought leaders. So once again, that is at 7 p.m. Yeah, so a big thanks to Claire Byrne for coming. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. It was very insightful.
Really?
Hey,
Yeah, very.
welcome.